They called it just paperwork. That's what my mother-in-law said the day I signed my marriage certificate, laughing behind her wine glass like the promise I'd just made meant nothing more than a form at the DMV. My husband Daniel laughed along with her. I remember standing there in my white dress, still smelling like the flowers from the ceremony, feeling something crack quietly inside my chest. I told myself it was just her sense of humor. I told myself a lot of things over the next 11 years that I now know were lies I needed to survive. Daniel and I met in college, the kind of meeting that felt like fate. A rainstorm, a dropped umbrella, a laugh that turned into a phone number. We built a life together the way people do when they're young and certain. A starter apartment, then a house, then 2 kids who had his eyes and my stubbornness. I gave up my career in marketing when our son was born because Daniel's job paid more and someone needed to be home. That was the deal. That was supposed to be fair. His family never really accepted me. I was the girl from nowhere, as his sister once called me at Thanksgiving, thinking I couldn't hear from the kitchen. Daniel never corrected them. He'd just shrug and say, "That's just how they are. Don't take it personally." I took it personally every single time. But I stayed because I believed marriage meant something, even if the people around us treated it like a formality, an inconvenience, just paperwork, to be tolerated until something better came along. The cracks became canyons around year 9. Daniel started staying late at the office. The kind of late that comes with a change in cologne and a phone that suddenly needed a passcode. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself 11 years of trust doesn't evaporate because a man starts caring about his appearance again. I was wrong. I found out about Vanessa the way most betrayed spouses do. Not through a confession, but through carelessness. A hotel receipt in a jacket pocket. A name that meant nothing to me and apparently everything to him. When I confronted him, Daniel didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He looked relieved. "I've been unhappy for a while," he said, like unhappiness was a weather pattern instead of a choice he'd been making behind my back for months. And then he said the words that would echo in my head for the rest of that year. "It's not like this marriage was ever that serious anyway. You know how my family feels about it." As if his mother's old joke had somehow become the official record of our life together. As if love that raised 2 children and paid a mortgage and held each other through his father's funeral was never real to begin with. I hired a lawyer that same week. Her name was Renata, and she was the first person in this entire ordeal who looked at me like my marriage had mattered. She asked me one question that changed everything. "Did you keep records?" I didn't understand what she meant at first. She explained that in our state, the length of the marriage, the sacrifices I'd made for his career, and the assets we'd built together, the house, his retirement accounts, even the business he'd started with money from our joint savings. All of it counted. All of it was real, legally and otherwise, whether his family respected it or not. Daniel's lawyer tried to argue that I'd contributed minimally to the marriage since I hadn't worked in 9 years. I sat in that mediation room and listened to a stranger try to erase a decade of packed lunches, sick days, school pickups, and every ounce of my career I'd sacrificed so Daniel could climb his. Renata didn't flinch. She laid out the numbers. My unpaid labor had a value, and the court recognized it. Half of everything he thought was his alone, the retirement fund, the equity in the house, even a portion of the business, became mine because on paper, in the eyes of the law, our marriage had been exactly as serious as any other. More serious maybe given how long I'd held it together alone. Daniel didn't see it coming. I don't think his mother did either. She called me once during the proceedings, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it, asking if there was really no other way. I told her the same thing she'd said to me 11 years earlier on my wedding day, with a little less laughter in my voice. It's just paperwork. Except this paperwork came with a number, and the number was significant enough that Daniel had to sell the vacation property he loved more than he ever loved being honest with me. The kids stayed with me most of the time. Daniel visits when it's convenient for him, which tells you everything about what kind of father distance reveals a person to be. Vanessa didn't last. I heard through mutual friends that she left within the year. Once she realized the version of Daniel she'd fallen for was mostly the version that I'd spent a decade propping up. People ask me sometimes if I regret marrying him, given how it ended. I don't. I regret staying quiet every time his family made me feel small for believing in something they treated like a joke. What I've learned, and what I hope anyone listening to this takes with them, is that vows are not decoration. They are not paperwork to be mocked at a dinner table by people who never had to live inside them. They are real, they are binding, and when you build a life on top of them, that life belongs to you too. Every sacrifice, every year, every quiet act of love that no one else was watching. Daniel's family called our marriage nothing. In the end, the law called it everything, and so do I.